Hello, JSK. I see five. Well, my stream shows it's 5 people watching, but the analytics for YouTube aren't showing me anybody here yet. Hello, Jody. We're going to do a little bit of talking here. FAA just announced, I just got an email, they just announced the rules for the remote ID. So we're going to dig into it. I'm just kind of waiting for some more people to come in. Hopefully this notification's going out and people are seeing that I'm online here. I trust you guys can hear me okay. Let me see here. I can unmute. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, I'm going to see if, make sure my audio is going out. Yep, okay. Working good. Everything's working. That's a good thing. So, yeah, so the FAA, I just got the email that they've announced the, hello Trevor, that they have announced the remote identification ruling. And I'm going to put a link in the description. I should have done that already. I wonder if I can do that now. Copy. I wonder if I can edit this while I'm live. I don't know if I can or not. Let's see if that shows up. I don't know if that's going to show up in there or not, you guys. I'm going to refresh the live stream. Yeah, it did show up. Awesome. That's good. Hey, Bob. So the FAA announced a little bit ago an executive summary rule on the FAA remote identification for drones. It's going to be called Part 89. So it's going to be CFR 14 Part 89. So I don't know how many of you guys have read it or not, but I've got it right here, and I figured the best thing to do is just go ahead and go over it and look at it and see what we can learn. They're calling it an incremental step toward further integration of unmanned aircraft to national airspace. I wonder what incremental step means. Hello, Backwoods Droner brother. In the most basic form, remote ID can be described as a digital license plates for drones. The final rule, Part 89. I need to mute that audio. That's terrible. Final rule, Part 89 of Title 14 of the Federal Code of Regulations. The rule has been sent to the Federal Register and will become effective after 60 days. So it's expected to be publicized or published, all of the above, probably in late January. Don't need a license plate? I think it's going to be 30 months, Bob. The final all required to register remotely identify. All UAs, all drones required to register must remotely identify. The operators have 3 options. If the drone, this is all for drones weighing less than 55 pounds, or 0.55 pounds, of course. 0.55 pounds or less. So, what does that really mean? Is it not applicable to drones over 0.55 pounds? For unmanned aircraft weighing 0.55 pounds or less, remote ID is only required if the operator is operating under rules that require registration, such as Part 107. There's going to be, yeah, Mitch, I do too. There's going to be some interesting things that come up because of that. You watch. Drones that require registration. Operational rule takes effect 30 months after the effective date of the rule. So we have up until 30 months, or almost 3 years, 2.5 years, to comply based on what that says right there. I'm trying to watch chat and read this too. But the flights over people and moving vehicles appear to be for fixed wing. Okay, I don't quite understand what you mean, Wesley, with your question there. Flights over people and moving vehicles only appear to be for fixed wing and not ones with props. Fixed wing would mean glider, and if it's a glider without a prop, a fixed wing without a prop is a glider, and if it's a glider, it's not going to fly very far. So it's got props, even if it's a fixed wing. Yeah, I agree, Mitch. The external module is the only way to go, but ducted motors doesn't matter. If it's an unmanned aircraft, it's an unmanned aircraft. It doesn't matter if it's powered by liquid nitrogen or electric motors and a LiPo battery. It doesn't matter. If it's unmanned, it's unmanned. If it's an aircraft, it's an aircraft. If it's both, it's an unmanned aircraft, otherwise known as a drone of some sort. Hello, Angela. Welcome. So it's got a broadcast ID remote messages from the drone, basically, via radio frequency, likely Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and they haven't figured that out yet, apparently. But it's got some standard information that they want to be put out there. The serial number of the drone or session ID, physical location of the drone, and the velocity of the drone. Here's the part that is going to make people nervous. Longitude and latitude of the control station. In other words, remote ID messages will be available to most personal wireless devices within range of the broadcast. Correlating serial number session ID with the registration database will be limited to the FAA and can be made available to local law enforcement and national security personnel. National security personnel. What a coincidence that this wording is in there after I talked about that thing last night with, you think a drone's being nefarious? Is it hovering too long? Is it, better call the police and report it. Range of remote ID broadcast may vary, designed on the maximum range at which it can be received. And we all know that Bluetooth and Wi-Fi doesn't go very far. Bluetooth's good to about, reliably, it's good to about 50 or 75 feet. Or at least all the Bluetooth stuff that I've ever dealt with is only good to about 50 or 75 feet. Excuse me. The other option is a module The thing that bothers me about this, and I don't know what you guys think, but it enables you to attach a separate device, a module, to your drone so that it'll broadcast all this information. It enables retrofit for existing unmanned aircraft. It's still got to use all the same information. But as I understand this, you can't get just one module and use it for each drone you fly. Because if you're a 107, each of your drones has a registration number. The module must transmit the registration number and serial number of your drone. That means you're going to have a module for every single drone if you're a 107 pilot. And we're going to talk about 107 rules coming up pretty soon on a show I'm going to be on. That's going to be some interesting stuff that you guys aren't going to want to miss. How many we got watching? 20? That says 20. Good deal. 20 and only 4 thumbs up. Come on. The part of the rules that says do not contain any exposed rotating parts that could lacerate human skin. Ah. Yeah, I haven't got to that part yet, Wesley. Come on. Stay with me here. Quit skipping ahead in the rule book. Don't know how much it's going to cost yet. Anyway, you guys are seeing this. I've got the link in the description so that anyone that hasn't seen it yet, you can go in the description of the video and download the PDF file and have a copy of it for yourself. Oh, you're not going to stick around, Mitch? Come on, I was hoping maybe I'd get you to join the panel here with me. Is that true for Recurrent Test? It's free and online. No, the Recurrent Test, if you're talking about your 107 test, is not free. And it's, as far as I know, not online. You still have to go to a operating center and an operating testing center and take the test on their machine. And it's $160. It's not free. That the people that administer the tests are going to get their money. They're going to charge for them. And in fact, when I took my recurrent test, I had to pay up front online and then show up at my appointed time that I had set up. And Angie's right. It's $160 each time if you don't pass. That's very true. You have to pay again. So, geographic areas recognized where FAA unmanned aircraft not equipped with remote ID are allowed to fly. So there will be areas that apparently community-based organizations, so your local AMA field, you won't be required to have remote ID, things like that. Must operate within visual line of sight and the boundaries of the FRIA. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. Most unmanned aircraft must be produced as standard remote ID and meet the requirements ruling beginning 18 months after the effective date of the rule. That means, right there, that drones 18 months after January, so middle of 2022, the manufacturers have to include remote ID information. Okay? Remote ID modules must be produced to meet the requirements of the rule before they can be used. Well, gee, anything has to be made to meet the requirements before you can use it. I mean, if your car doesn't meet the requirements of safely carrying you down the highway, would you use it? Probably not. Any person with any sense, anyway. A person designing or producing a standard UA or broadcast module must show that the module met the performance requirements of the rule by following an FAA accepted means of compliance. So that tells me they've already got compliance ideas that if somebody wants to make the modules and sell them, they've got to comply with certain requirements. Makes sense. It's got to broadcast all that stuff, which means it has to be able to, if it's a module and it doesn't hardwire to the drone, that means it has to get the information from the drone somehow and then rebroadcast it. So the whole thing is kind of interesting to me. This is something else that is interesting to me. Cannot be disabled by the operator. But yet up here they say you can fly without remote ID. Hello, Captain Ray. If you're in a FRIA, a recognized identification area like a AMA field. It's not required there, so you wouldn't have to use it, but down here it says it can't be disabled by the operator. It must be broadcast over unlicensed radio frequencies. So they're going to use standard open public communications, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, what have you. Trying to that you don't have to have 107, Bob. Absolutely, you don't have to have it. But you absolutely can be held accountable to 107 regulations under certain conditions. And that is a fact. Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast, ADSB. The final rule amends Part 91 and 107 to prohibit use of ADSB out or ATC transponders on drones unless otherwise authorized by the administrator or flying under a flight plan and in two-way radio communications with ATC. Oh, I have no doubt that somebody is doing that, Ray. Maybe the AMA's doing it, for all I know. But, you know, the government's got bigger, better lawyers, so it's going to be pretty hard to beat the government no matter what you try to do. Aeronautical research, deviation authority. The final rule provides a mechanism for FAA administrator to authorize deviations from operating requirements. So you had to know, they say you can't fly a drone at night, but they'll give you a daytime waiver. You had to know there's going to be some sort of a waiver available at some point to allow you to fly without remote ID. And I don't know exactly what that's going to be. They don't go into detail much there on it. Network-based internet transmission requirements have been eliminated. That's probably the best news in this whole document, all 3 pages of it. You don't need it to that right there is the best news in this whole document as far as I'm concerned. As I was glancing over this thing before I went live, I thought, I'm going to make sure I remember to mention that, because that's good news. I mean, that means that your information is not going to be stored on some database that can be hacked and people can get all your personal information, right? Operators under the exception for limited recreational operations may continue to register with the FAA once rather than register each aircraft. However, each standard broadcast module must be entered into the registration record for that unmanned aircraft. They don't say how much they're going to charge us to register our modules. I think you meant where no internet is available, Trevor, but you put on internet. I think you meant no internet. Yes, that's exactly what that means. And it is good news. Excuse me. So here's the other thing that I was just starting to talk about. Each module must be entered into the registration record of the unmanned aircraft. So are they going to modify the current registration to allow you to put your module serial number in there? Or are they going to charge more? Registration right now for a 107 commercial operators, $5 a drone. Is that price going to go up? Are they going to charge for these modules to be registered? Yeah, they don't really go into that. Limited remote ID UAS has been eliminated and replaced with remote ID broadcast module requirements to enable existing UAS to comply. Yeah, because they want everybody that's still got drones now to be able to comply with the rule. So they eliminated the old rule that they were talking about and gave us a module. Oh boy, something else we can carry on our drones. I wonder how the Mavic Mini is going to handle a module. Oh, let me guess. That puts it over the 250 grams, so now it has to be registered. What do you think of that information, folks? Yeah, I'm not so sure people are going to like that idea. Applications may be submitted beginning 18 months after the effective date of the rule. So somebody tried to tell me that they weren't going to expand any of the areas allowing drones to fly. Yeah, right? Toothpick, that's funny. If you have a piece of property that you want to turn it into a free area of flying model aircraft and drones, you can submit an application to the FAA and get your piece of property sanctioned as a free place to fly, free of some of the regulations and some of the rules. Educational institutions may apply now, as well as community-based organizations. The biggest community-based organizations, the AMA, and they've already got all their zones, but you can still add to it. And they may start expanding. They may start letting more people start clubs and AMA clubs and identify a certain piece of land as a FRIA zone for drones and model aircraft. So that's the 3 pages, everybody. This is the summary report, of course. Civil unmanned operations. The rule allows registered in a foreign country to operate in the United States only if the operator files a notice with the FAA. This enables the FAA and law enforcement to correlate the remote ID broadcast with a person. Hello, Johnny. So I heard this question come up a few times about flying from foreign countries. If you don't live here, you're not registered with the FAA here, can you still fly here? They've got provisions in the rulings now that will allow you, if you're from Canada, you come down here as long as you file a notice with the FAA, and I'm sure that there will be a place to do that at some point soon if there's not already. I'm not aware of that, but you'll have to register your remote ID module with the FAA here so that it'll be trackable and registered, just like everybody else's will be trackable and registered. So, in a nutshell, let me know what you guys think in the chat, and comments later after the video posts. It says remote ID must not allow the UA to take off unless it is operational. Wonder how that will work with a module not being built into the UA. Well, that's interesting that somehow it's going to have to be connected to the drone. Electronically wired something is going to have to be connected to the drone. It may be something we plug into the USB port on our controller. Johnny, the Go4 app has had remote ID built into it for a very long time, couple of years, as far as I know. It's in the Go4 app. It's been in the Go4 app for a very long time. So with DJI knowing that remote ID was coming, I'm sure they've got it in that app as well. So it's in the Air 2 app, it's the Fly app, it's in the Go4 app. It's already in the Pilot app for commercial application. It's already in that and in use. So, yeah, Bob, it's the same app, the Fly app, yeah. Yep, that's it. That's exactly it right there. So it's been being used in commercial operations for quite some time. And like I said, the Go4 app has had it for, God, long as I can remember. I just don't think anybody paid much attention to it because it's not something you use. But that's the executive summary rule on the remote ID stuff. Again, the link is in the video description for the download of this PDF if you want to read this over. And as I get more information and other things, I will put them in the links and on my website, 400agl.net. Curious how this affects DJI no longer has plans to add ADSB. It's going to be very interesting how the FAA will enforce this. Oh, XJet. Hello, sir. Welcome. Yes, the aviation overlords. That's a good way to put it. Hey, I'm going to create a thing here really quick, and I would like for you to join me if you have time. I know it's an odd hour for where you are right now, but let me go to guest cameras and create an input of a video call. And let's see. Copy link. Okay. I wonder if this will work. XJet. Click that link right there in the chat. How are you, sir? And see if it'll let you in. And I'm going to make some adjustments while we're doing that. I'll check back on that in just a minute. Move this. Whoops. What am I? Oh, I got to go up here and move this back to center. And then I got to go. Oh my goodness, things are moving all over the place on me. Move this over here and close that. And go back to here. And yes, there he is. Okay, let me get, I think it's Bruce. Is it Bruce, I think? God, I hope I'm old. Don't kill me if, let's see here. Let's bring you into slot number 2 and let's fix the scale and let's move you over there and let's do this and crop you. Whoop. Crop you over there. Oh, I don't have your audio on yet. Hang on. I'm still getting things adjustable here. We get that done, and now go here and turn your audio on. Okay, your audio should be on. We should be good. Let me see if I can hear you. Nope. I'm not hearing you. I'm not getting your audio, Bruce. I'm still not getting it. Are you guys hearing it? Anybody in chat hearing it? Yeah, no sound from X yet. Oh, what in the heck is going on? Let me do this. Let me do it a different way. Go to Bruce, go to vmixcall.com and once you get there, type in that number as the password. Let's see if that works.
Sounds.
Oh, wait, we got it.
Yep. Now I can hear you.
Yep, we got it. Your audio came. Good to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too.
Yeah, I'm a fan of your videos. I like watching you guys fly out at the field, and your 1-point landing videos are amazing.
You call that flying? You're watching the wrong videos. There's no flying in my videos. We're just proving gravity still works.
That's exactly right. So, anyway, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the module and stuff? I'm kind of excited about that because that means that people with older drones and things can still be able to fly them.
Yeah, it's interesting. They had to do that because there was no way the proposed rule was going to work. But I still have my concerns because we don't know what exactly the requirements are. How heavy will these modules be? Will they be fully self-contained, so they'll have to have a battery, so they can't be tampered with, in which case they're going to be, small drones can be quite hindered by that. And the other problem, we've got a lot of people flying FPV. They've got, video transmitters and things, and it's hard enough with a small quadcopter, for example, to get GPS to work because you've got all that noisy electronics in such a small area that quite often the GPS doesn't work. So you might be able to fit a remote ID module, but the remote ID module may not work, in which case you still can't fly.
Well, they talk about the under 55 pounds. Where did I see that?
It's under 250 grams, yeah, half a pound.
Yeah. They won't be required to use remote ID.
Unless you're flying under Part 107.
Right. And if you're sharing your videos or pictures on any social media, you are flying under 107 regulations.
So what they're saying is you might as well use a big, heavy, dangerous drone.
Yeah, something that can come through people's windshields and things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I get
it. It's hard to believe this is all about safety, isn't it? Really?
I'm surprised that's why I said some of the fees that are going to go along with this, like how much is it going to cost me to buy a module?
And the other thing too, they're talking about using Wi-Fi type frequencies. I think the last thing my sensitive little radio control receiver needs is a remote ID transmitter broadcasting in its ear at enough power level to be picked up over several hundred meters.
Right. But see, the funny thing is that they're specifically saying Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, right? Well, the issue with that is we all know Bluetooth isn't good enough, but like I said, 50 or 75 feet tops, anything I've ever used Bluetooth. And Wi-Fi is okay. It doesn't have a fantastic range, so it's not going to broadcast for miles and miles and miles, but it creates Wi-Fi noise. So if you've got 30 drones, this is a out of proportion example, but if you've got 30 drones in a 2 mile square area and they're all broadcasting Wi-Fi, I would think that would kind of jumble things up a little bit.
Yeah, well, there's another problem. I mean, for example, I use the RunCam cameras a lot, they're HD recording cameras, and most of them have got Wi-Fi option. And if you're silly enough to take off with the Wi-Fi enabled, you'll soon find out it does dramatically reduce your range.
Sure it does. Anything, especially if you're using a Wi-Fi drone, like some of the smaller, lesser expensive drones that use Wi-Fi to communicate to the transmitter and controller. It's like, how's that going to work? I don't think it's going to, but...
Yeah. And it's all kind of supposed to solve this problem of safety and security, but as I pointed out in the video, I don't know if you've seen it, I posted, basically what it's going to do is you can just steal someone's little remote ID thing and stick it on your own drone and incriminate them whilst the police think you're a good actor, because as long as you're broadcasting a remote ID, you'll be seen to be compliant, but you could be doing bad things using someone else who's using a stolen drone or a stolen remote ID transmitter. It opens the door to new crimes.
That is a possibility, but I don't see that as a real big reality.
The reality is that people don't use these things for crimes anyway. They say, with all these people dropping contraband into prisons. Well, more contraband gets into prison in people's backsides than ever got in through drones. It's just, it is. They like to play up, and it's all what if. Because we look at in Tennessee, someone used an RV as an explosive device, right?
My hometown. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're not looking at clamping down more on the use of RVs and having them have to have remote ID other than just the tags on the vehicle.
Careful, don't give them any ideas over here.
And we had the Boston Marathon bombing. That people weaponized pressure cookers, but we don't have to register our pressure cookers.
Right.
They're making all these claims for something that has never happened. No one has ever died as a result of the recreational use of multi-rotor drones anywhere in the world, but we have so much regulation and restriction. So our regulation is not commensurate with the level of risk. They're overstating the level of risk because I think we've got a whole lot of bureaucrats who are looking for a reason to justify their jobs, and this is one way to do it.
Hang on, Brian. Brian, what's up? You're on speakerphone on the live stream too, by the way.
With who?
XJet, and I'm on a live stream talking about remote ID. FAA just sent me an email a little bit ago.
remote ID is the least that you need to worry about.
Well, yeah,
I would
but
be more concerned about flying over people and flying at night. That's the trick. That way you can, you know, you can open up your door to more opportunities. You know, and you won't be doing the illegal stuff. You'll be flying legal.
oh,
I was reading the email myself, and the remote ID I'm not really concerned about, because I think that's actually it's a catch-22. It's a double-edged sword. But I also think that, you know, it'd be like if they said we have to turn off all the IDs off of airplanes flying over. You know, I think it's a little bit safer, as long as they don't disclose your information to people, which they say they're not going to.
and it says in there that the information is only available to the FAA, and local authorities can get it if they want it.
Right. Which is okay. I'm okay with that. But I like the fact that you can fly over people, you can fly over moving vehicles, and you can fly at night. That's the most exciting part for me, because then that eliminates me having to have a COA to do some of my work at the spur of a moment.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't eliminate all of those rules, though.
It doesn't eliminate them. But if you read the PDF, you can, you know, like in my case, if, you know, power line's down at 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't have to have a COA to be legal to fly that power line.
Right.
You know, whereas before I did. I don't have to have a COA if somebody calls and says, hey, I'm doing a music video and I want you to fly over top of 5 people dancing with smoke in the crowd, you know?
Yeah.
So it kind of opens the door a little bit. It's not all the way open, but it's cracked. And I just wanted to call and just, you know, chit chat with you for a second about that.
And I think that in certain situations will make it helpful. But anyway.
Yeah, it'll be good in certain situations.
Yep.
No, I didn't know you were on the phone or on a live stream. I just thought I'd call you real quick. I'm out here with my dad, and we're just kind of, you know, hanging out.
Okay. Yeah. Well, tune in.
What's the name of the channel?
My channel, you ding dong.
Oh, it's Sunday, isn't it? No, it's Monday.
It's Monday. I'm on a live stream, and I've got a famous guest from across the pond on with me.
Yeah?
Yeah. So tune in.
Cool. All right. Well, let me get off the phone and tune in.
All right. Talk to you.
I got to get in there and hit that thumbs down twice.
That's right. See ya.
All
right. And that was some interesting information too. Something that I was thinking about with the ability of having the remote ID, then that is going to open the door to make it a little easier for commercial flyers to fly at night or fly over traffic if need be and things like that.
Yeah, it's obviously oriented towards the commercial operator, and the hobby is the one that misses out or loses out. And that's always been the way. They want to marginalize the hobby in favor of commercial interests.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly why they're adding this in there, so that the big box people can fly their drones at night and over moving traffic and everything else. Even though when it's flight for hire carrying product, it falls under a different category than 107, and I can't remember the number right off the top of my head, but it's a totally different category.
It'll be interesting to see where they go. I still think there's a lot of holes in this whole thing. It's 30 months before they actually get in there, and
30 months before it's actually required.
Yeah, we've got there's a time when we can make submissions object to the whatever, isn't there? You can file a statement or something objecting to the rule in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, yep. Protest it, contest it. You know, there's going to be all kinds of things flying, I'm sure, over the next probably year. So the good thing is this is absolutely nothing we have to worry about today.
No, but if we don't do something about it today, it'll happen tomorrow.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that's my biggest disappointment is the fact that I think we're not a cohesive force. We're all individuals looking out for number one. There's been no real concerted effort, and as a result, we've been an easy target to walk all over. And once you lose something, it's much harder to get it back than to keep it.
It absolutely is. And you know, the thing that gets me though is so many people, and I mean so many people, get upset if you know, you shouldn't do that. You should fly like this because that's against the rules. Well, what are you, the drone police? You know what I mean? I've taken a lot of heat in the past for calling things out that I firmly believed in, you know? I mean, if it's a cast iron skillet, I'm going to say it's a cast iron skillet. If you don't like your eggs cooked in a cast iron skillet, that's not my problem. It's still a cast iron skillet. It's still the rule. You still got to follow the rule. You make everybody else look bad when you don't.
Yeah. Well, I think Section 336 was passed for a very good reason, and it was repealed for a very bad one. And that's where we should have, or the hobby should have made its standing point and said, no, you can't repeal this. It's there for a reason. It was agreed by a majority of the Senate. And therefore, you need to have a damn good reason. Where's your risk assessment to justify the removal of this protection from the hobby? But no one did. The AMA said, leave it with us. We've got things going on behind the scenes you don't know about. We've got your back covered, and look what happened.
Yeah. It all went kapooey out the window.
Yeah.
What are some of your other thoughts about where this could go in the future?
Well, I think they're pushing.
Maybe what you know what I mean? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think that the technology is improving at such a pace that going 250, sub 250 is going to be the future. It's the only place the hobby's going to have left to go. And so, and I mean, you're getting, like I've got little drones when I pulled out before. I mean, this is under 250 grams. I could fly this without having to register or have remote ID on it. Yep. And that returns the freedoms that you had previously. And in places like Canada, there's not even any rules for sub 250 craft. There's no prescriptive rules. You can do what you like, just don't hurt people. And so that, to me, seems like the direction they're pushing us. And if we go in that direction, by the time we get there, the technology will have caught up, and it'll be, you know, the models are smaller, safer, but we can do all the things that we used to do if we want to. And so maybe that just is where we have to go. But I think eventually, as is now happening in other countries, they're going to start dropping that limit lower and lower. And we'll have a situation where we are eventually restricted to Frias. We're just going to be able to fly in little grassy fields of miles from nowhere, and the hobby is going to suffer.
And that's exactly where I think the whole thing is eventually headed, and it's very unfortunate. But like the Mavic Mini drone is 249 grams. When you put the prop guards on it, it's no longer sub 250. It requires registration. So,
and you'd have to put your 20 or 30 gram remote ID thing on it, so suddenly it's a little brick.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so the comment up here, less than 55.55 pounds, right? I mean,
yeah.
How that you can't even call it a boomerang at that point, you know? I mean,
the thing that annoys me too is that every single craft with weighing more than 0.55 pounds that isn't flown at a Fria will have to have remote ID. But not all manned aircraft have to have ADSB. If they're operating in Class G airspace, they don't have to have ADSB. In fact, not all manned aircraft even need to have radios. Yet they're a huge threat to public safety. How many manned aircraft have the operation of manned aircraft, how many deaths have resulted from that this year alone? It's like, well, there's the real risks, but you're not worried about that. You're worried about people's toys. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, it's, you know, like you brought up the Nashville thing with the RV. I mean, that could obviously carry enough explosive material to cause a problem. A Mavic Pro, really? I mean, carry enough explosive material to cause a problem?
Yeah, it's if you want to do that sort of thing, a bicycle, you could put saddlebags on a bicycle, you could carry 10 times, 100 times as much as a small drone, but you'd have to register your bicycle. It's like, excuse me, what's the problem? Yep. And they say, oh, but, you know, because one of the arguments they use is, but people could do these bad deeds from a long way away with the drone, and they wouldn't have to risk their own lives. Well, excuse me, look at the guy in the RV. He took his own life as a part of that whole thing. People who want to do bad things, their lives, they don't think they're important. They're martyrs or whatever. So this whole thing about having skin in the game is just, it's just a red herring.
It's an excuse. Absolutely. There are so many things that you do on some of your videos that I'm just sitting here going, yeah, you tell them. You know?
Trouble is, I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah, we all are. But,
yeah.
you know, I still think that in a way we all need to help police ourselves. We all need to help keep ourselves stay safe. And I don't mean safe flying. I mean, well, I do mean safe flying, but I mean safe from breaking the rules and getting in trouble, you know?
Yeah.
I think we all have to help each other out, and I just think it'll be good for the hobby in the long run. And most people don't realize that the Reauthorization Act in the United States, the Reauthorization Act of 2018, the FAA lays out specific criteria that you must meet to be a hobby flyer. And if you can't meet that criteria, you are flying under 107 regulations, whether you are a 107 certified pilot or not.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't realize, no, I'm flying as a hobbyist, by God, and blah, blah, blah. And, well, if you don't meet this criteria, you are not flying as a hobbyist, and they don't get it.
And the crazy thing is that all over the world, other countries are moving away from this distinction between commercial and non-commercial flying. And on the 1st of January, the distinction's removed in the UK because EU rules make no distinction. There's no distinction in New Zealand because they realise that just because you're getting paid for something doesn't actually make that more risky. So why would you need a different rule set?
Exactly. And, you know, and rules are like padlocks. They're only good for the honest people. You know,
it's actually worse than that because rules people hide behind rules. They say, I was following the rules, even if they knew something wasn't particularly safe, because rules don't stop you from doing bad things.
Sure.
They just enable the people to apply blame afterwards. You know, it's your fault you broke the rules, but even rules don't necessarily protect you from doing bad things. And whereas someone can, if they're having to operate on their own common sense, they'll stop and think, is this a good thing to do? And if it's not a good thing to do, you won't do it. But if you can stand behind the rules and say, I can do this because the rules don't say I can't, you end up with an unsafe environment because people, instead of using their brains, are using the rule book.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And to my way of thinking, we should be training people to think responsibly. That's why I love the Canadian rules. Do not endanger people, do not endanger property, do not endanger aviation. If you meet those 3 criteria, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You don't need rules because all the rules are simply designed to produce that end result. And all I've done is short circuit the whole thing and say, well, this is what we're trying to achieve. Don't endanger these things and you're good to go. And
exactly.
Hey, yeah, and there's no loopholes in those rules because if someone gets hurt, if property gets damaged, or aviation is endangered, you're in trouble. Doesn't matter how you achieve that, you're still in trouble. Whereas if here under the current rules in New Zealand, I could endanger aviation without breaking the rules.
Take this little thing right here. I mean, if I could throw it hard enough, I could endanger aviation with it. If I was in the right location, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, it's you're exactly right. You're absolutely spot on.
But I think I come from a different generation. When I was young, we were taught to be self-reliant and take responsibility for everything we did. We didn't hide behind things. If you did something wrong, you were responsible. But these days, it's more a case of give the government all your money, they'll take care of you, and they will give you rules you can live by, and you don't have to think for yourself. We'll do it for you.
Yep. That's very true. I saw something in the comment. Eat More Possum said, Vic Moss is saying that the public broadcast of PIC's location is required in the new rules. Not according to what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing in this summary is only the FAA will be privy to that information. Not even law enforcement will be able to get it unless they get it from the FAA. And I'm sure there'll be some sort of a handshake.
And I gather it's the takeoff point, not the actual pilot location. It's the point you take off from. And any smart pilot will soon move away from that point once they've left the ground.
Well, yeah, but you know how many really do, you know?
Yeah.
Usually when I'm doing inspection work and stuff, I don't move from where I took off from because that's probably where I'm going to need to land.
That's where your return to home will take you if you're if you need that, isn't it? Exactly. But from a recreational point of view, it's not uncommon for me to take off and then move from the position where I took off. But I mean, again, my drones don't have GPS on them. I'm a freestyle type flyer. I don't have GPS or return to home or anything. So that means that suddenly my drones, if I was flying in the USA under this rule, will have to have a GPS receiver fitted, which they don't need for any reason other than to report their position. And I think that's, if I'm flying in the middle of a grassy field miles from anywhere, where there's no one else around, why do I need to have that in position and broadcast that information? Because there's not going to be anyone there to pick it up anyway.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing about with this, it's like Wi-Fi is not going to travel that far, and with all the Wi-Fi interference there is floating in the air already, I don't really see this doing a lot of good. I think I see this as a lot of smoke and mirrors, really.
Yeah, I think perhaps as I said, there's a lot of bureaucrats justifying their positions by coming up with unnecessary rules and restrictions. But they're really just laying the groundwork for when the commercial entities say, well, we need all this airspace now. We can't have anyone who's not, commercially operating in here. Let them stay on their Frias and just clear the space. No flying outside of a Fria. That's it. Full stop. End of story.
And that's what I'm afraid is going to happen in the future. But there are still plenty, and there's a lot of them. I mean, inspection work, commercial inspection work, there's a lot of that goes on. Now, granted, most of that is electric towers. A lot of them are, the big ones are 100 feet tall, maybe 110 tops. So even doing an inspection, I'm not much more than 120 or 125 feet above ground level at that location. Everything else would be below that. Roof inspections, you're 30 feet off the ground. Power line inspections in a residential neighborhood, you're 40 feet off the ground. So even if they limit, I'm not so sure it's going to be quite complete limit to Frias, but I think they're going to limit the elevation allowance to 100 feet or 150 feet or 200 feet.
Yeah, for me that's not a problem. I spend most of my time flying very close to the ground. I like to fly proximity FPV, which means I'm barely above the ground, through the trees, that sort of thing. That's what I like to do, which is lower than the traditional hobby. And I can't see why. I mean, I'm not flying in navigable airspace. There should be no aircraft where I'm flying. So why does anyone need to know where I am, what I'm doing? And it's no different to me when I'm walking around with my video camera, with my phone. Nobody has a right to know who I am. I have a right to anonymity. So why should I lose that right just because I'm flying a camera and I'm flying at 6 feet above the ground between some trees? There's no reason why anyone should have to give up their anonymity for that. I don't know about the USA, but if a policeman stops you and asks you your name, do you have to give it to him?
You don't have to, but he will call his friends and they will all make your life hell until you do.
So it's not a legal requirement, but it's not a legal requirement unless you're flying a toy. Now, as of the new rule. Because you're going to give it away. You're going to give it away with your remote ID because I'll look it up on the FAA register. So this is the thing that annoys me. We are giving away so many freedoms, the right to privacy, the right, to so many things, but just giving them away freely.
Don't get me started on giving away our civil rights.
Yeah.
This whole pandemic nonsense. Don't get me going on giving up civil rights now.
So, it's unfortunately, as I say, we've got this system now where you give away your freedoms in return for security. And as was it Benjamin Franklin, was it, who said that to those who give away their was it freedom in the name of security deserves neither, or something. I forget what it was. It's not. Yeah. But I mean that's so true. But young people today, and I sound like an old bugger now. Current generation, they're happy to give up all the freedoms in return for what they get back. I mean, maybe that's just the way. Maybe we're just out of date. Maybe we're just old stock, and we should accept what's coming.
Well, I'm hard on just accepting things like that, though. It's just like a lot of the rules and things going on right now with the civil liberties things. As a patriot and a veteran, I have a really hard time with government overreach and taking away my rights. And I don't want to get into that.
That's another stream.
that's a totally other stream, and absolutely would have to be adult locked, because if I spoke my mind, it wouldn't be pretty. But it's I'm in a way I'm kind of speechless about this remote ID stuff. In a way, I think it's a good thing. In a way, I think it could be a bad thing. But overall, I think it's just a little bit tighter grip on everything in the model flying world, no matter what kind of model you're flying.
Yeah, it is, but it's incremental, and if you do things in small enough increments, no one notices until it's too late. It's, the frog in the boiling pan of water. It's just, and that's the trouble. People just aren't paying attention. So many people, they'll only recognize what they've lost once it's gone.
Yeah, that's exactly true.
And that's what bureaucrats and people in power rely on. They rely on this inertia, this lethargy, this unwillingness to stand up and protect yourself, and that's how they get things done. I mean, even this remote ID thing, if they've come in with a really, really overbearing proposal, and then they've delivered a rule which backs off a bit, so people think, "Whoa, that was good. Gosh, this is much better than." But it's probably what they wanted in the first place. It's the way that smart people work.
It's amazing how they do things that way. It really is. And if you sit back and look at some of the stuff that's gone on in the past, and follow it and analyze it step by step, you go, wow, that's exactly what they did. They wanted to drop a 5-pound boulder on everybody, but they scared everybody with a 5-pound boulder, and when they only dropped a 2-pound one, everybody went, wow, that's pretty cool. It was only a 2-pounder,
Exactly,
Yeah.
and we're seen as grumpy old men, but the reality is we've been around long enough to see this happen before, and we recognize that. People that are perhaps a bit younger, they don't recognize, they've never seen it before, and so they oh no, you're all wrong, you're wrong, until that happens, and then when they get old, they realize, gosh, that guy was right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other thing, well, this is just another way for more Big Brother tracking. I don't know anybody in the world, hardly, that doesn't have one of these. If you look at my desk, there's actually 2 of them, okay? If I was really, really worried about Big Brother tracking me, I wouldn't have one of those.
Yeah, I don't have a smart one. I have an old one. See, one of these old flippy ones, and it still has the plastic on. But I don't use my smartphone. Doesn't have a SIM card in it. I use it as a tablet.
Oh, okay. Now,
I'm very much aware of that.
that drone there, Lon, you hush your mouth, son. My P.O. box, Bruce, is 12. P.O. box 12, okay? So everybody picks on me about when I got my P.O. box if the number's only 12. Yeah, I remember when there weren't any traffic laws.
Well, we can only hope that, because remember when cars first came along, you had to have a man walk in front with a red flag and fire a gun 100 meters from an intersection so you didn't scare the horses. But those rules gradually got relaxed over time. I'm thinking that our only hope is that this is a pendulum, and out of ignorance, it's swung way to the extreme. We're grossly overregulated. And once people realize these things aren't knocking airliners out of the sky, they're not blowing things up or killing people, maybe it'll swing back a bit, but it's probably going to not be in my lifetime, I think.
Well, maybe. But that's part of the thing that kind of bothers me is there's a lot of opinions of people that have the ability to slow the swing back. It gets way out of proportion at one point, and then when it starts coming back to a little more center, there's people that can slow that down and prolong that, and just in hopes that people will just give up and quit doing it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that if we look at bad rules that are not followed, they eventually disappear. There was prohibition in the 20s that disappeared because everyone was still drinking. We've had this cannabis law reform. It used to be a criminal drug. Now it's been decriminalized in most modern countries because people realized the laws weren't stopping people from doing it. So we might as well get rid of the laws, and therefore we don't have all these criminals that are unnecessary. Maybe with drones, if nobody follows the rules, if everyone just flies safely, but they don't do remote ID, eventually they can't put everyone in jail or fine everyone. They'll have to say, well, this remote ID thing, it's not actually working, and we're not seeing a massive wave of crimes related to drones. Perhaps it was an overreach. We need to cancel that law. That's the only way I can see of addressing this.
Yeah, and it really is. But that require the use of logic.
Yeah. And also require the community, the drone and model community, to act as a single cohesive force, and they're not going to. They're all, so many of them are just out for their own interest. As long as I can still fly my gas-powered warbird over a grassy field in the middle of nowhere, to hell with the rest of the world and the up-and-coming generations, future generations of hobby flyers. I'm having my fun. I don't care about them, and that's really, really kind of sad.
Yeah, it actually is. It actually is. I didn't intend for this to go this long. I seen you come in the chat, and I was like, now that's the guy I want on here talking with me about this.
And I've got things to do too.
I appreciate you taking the time, Bruce. I appreciate you coming to my stream. I'm just one of them little guys, I would never expect somebody like you to show up.
Everybody's important, mate. There's no such thing as a little guy in this world.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your time. Everybody in chat, what do we got? Almost 40 people. 19 thumbs ups, 1 thumbs down. Y'all better get on them thumbs over there. Y'all, well, you need to hit it 3 more times then. That'll keep it as thumbs down, by the way, if you do that. Get on the stick with that thumbs up and share this video. We put out some good information, some good conversation. And Bruce, thank you.
No worries.
I appreciate you. Everybody else in chat, thank you. You could have been anywhere. You chose to be here, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks so very much for coming in. And I got to find a button because I closed up all my windows over there. We'll see y'all later.
Bye for now.
And okay.